And somehow Camus exploits all of that for literature. That's the amazing thing, that this fascinating, though ambivalent moment in history when the globe is becoming one, you have a writer who is translating that into literature, connecting literary exploration.
And one of the things he's doing by writing his epic is creating Portuguese as a literary language,
Right.
which until his time was viewed as a kind of mongrel kind of Castilian. There isn't even yet Spanish as one language. There are several regional languages. It's viewed as a stepchild of the peninsular region. And this is the first major work that's really using literary Portuguese. You see this incredible excitement, which I think is very similar to Shakespeare, his near contemporary. Look at what I can do with this language. And I can have both the most highfalutin elegance, and I can have a kind of reality principle. You'll see Shakespeare making fun of the Petrarchan tradition, saying, my sweetheart's hair is not made out of wire, she's not made out of ivory, she has flesh and blood, and she walks with a tread on, like that. There's a wonderful passage in just before Adamastor, in the midst of this most mythological stuff. He's describing just sort of sailing techniques, and they bring the ship up on shore halfway in order to be able to scrape the bottom after you've been sailing for months. Here we careened the ships, scraping the hulls clean of 6 months' sludge and barnacles and limpets, harmful parasites for an ocean voyage. I'm prepared to stake my reputation as a philologist, which hardly exists, on the principle that the word sludge had never appeared in an epic in any language whatever. There is no sludge in the Homeric world.
Because the poets didn't experience.
That's right. And if they did, you wouldn't write about it in an epic. God forbid, right? And what's really interesting, you could compare this, say, to Camus' coeval Cervantes, writing just a few years later, Don Quixote. Cervantes also is making fun, in his case, of the Romance tradition, and one of the ways he plays with it is a reality principle. Giants really are windmills. So instead of Adamastor, you have a windmill. And it's crazy to think. So Camus had taken something different. It's not only the kind of comedy of realism, it's actually also the tragedy of it. You get these haunting, beautiful passages, and Camus was a great lyric poet, so also like Shakespeare. You could have someone who could do lyric and narrative at the same time. Volumes of sonnets are actually more popular in much of Europe than the epic itself. And these lyrical moments are haunting. There's a wonderful passage where one of these places is talking about people dying. Just a beautiful line, it is so easy to bury a body. And a stanza goes on from that, of like, whether it's at sea, whether it's land, it's hard to live and easy to die. These beautiful passages, just meditating on the adventure. It's not just the rock'em sock'em adventure at all, but there's a beautiful sort of moral, metaphysical dimension in there that we can still appreciate today, whatever we make of the imperial poets.
So it's interesting, there's this really move towards a kind of realism here. At the same time, in terms of the language, the sonnets are a much more modern form of Portuguese, whereas in this epic, which, as we said, in so many ways harkens back to classical traditions, he uses a more artificial, slightly more elevated, but also slightly more archaic, perhaps, Portuguese, in contrast to the modern Portuguese of the sonnet. So here too, we can see him sort of being torn between fully embracing the modern world and turning Portuguese into a literary language, at the same time being pulled back a little bit to his classical
In this sense,
models.
It's very much representative of great poetry of the epic ambitions in this age. Milton's Paradise Lost would be rather similar, very Latinate in its language, though still with up-to-date scientific observations mixed in, striking realism of how hell is depicted like that. I remember C.S. Lewis in one of his books remarks that if Milton had chosen a different theme, an Arthurian theme, he would have written much more like Spenser. Whereas with this sort of biblical theme, it becomes much more Virgilian, much more Latinate. So you also see Camus, like Shakespeare, like Milton, playing with the resources of levels of language for the purpose of the particular kind of thing he's writing.
And Milton is also, I think, a great example of what we said earlier, namely that it is an attempt to create a Christian version of these pagan epics. So some kind of combination of Christianity and classical antiquity that marks so much of Renaissance culture.
Absolutely.